Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's digital event, FOVEA Across the Platforms. I'm Sam Anderson. I will be your host today. I am the technical marketing consultant for ArchVision, also founder of Studio Ladder, but today we are here to focus on ArchVision and FOVEA. So I will give a rundown of what the next hour is going to look like, and then we'll dive into the content. So first, we'll start with some intros, just so you get to know everyone. We have Kelsey here, who's the sales operation manager. She's going to be the moderator on the back end. She is going to be your go-to person if you have any questions. If you do have any questions, feel free to add them to the Q&A portion of the Zoom panel at the bottom or top or wherever it is on your screen. We also have the chat in case you want to chat with us there as well. Now, we also have Corey, the CEO of ArchVision, who's very well versed in everything that we'll be talking about today. I know that I am extremely excited for the content that we're showing. Sometimes in the 3D world, we can all work in these silos and different programs, and this is going to be a game changer for all of our workflows moving forward. So I'm going to pass it off to Corey here in just a moment. I do want to let you know that we'll be monitoring the chat and the questions, and at the very end, around 10 or 15 minutes till the hour, we will dive into the Q&A. And so with that, Corey, I will pass it off to you.
Thank you, Sam. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Glad to be here and excited to get into this third of the three webinars that we've had over the last few weeks. I'm very excited to show this FOVEA stuff today and get in the weeds on this a little bit more with you all today. Before I kick into that, though, I will just mention a couple things about ArchVision and just so the folks that are newcomers to the equation here can know a little bit about us. ArchVision's been around since 1991, focusing on creating technologies for visualization pipelines, specifically around creating our RPC content that started back good old days, probably in the mid to early 90s, and then stretched into the mid 2000 era, well, 2012 or so, where things in the RPC world started to slow down a little bit. But the RPC technology is kind of the baseline for everything that we have built underneath this FOVEA platform. And this is all really about photorealistic content. It's about models, meshes, materials, and democratizing that content and getting it into your rendering engine, your CAD or BIM application, or even your DCC application of choice, so that you can visualize very quickly and not have to worry about converting and um, uh, building materials and so on and so forth. Just literally grab an asset that's ready-made, drag and drop and go. Um, what what FOVEA kind of started out from, just so um, you all have some kind of sense that we didn't just kind of pull this out of our heads and just start something from brand new. We did start. We had a product, part of our product called RPC Creator, which was designed for people to just bring in 2D PNG images and upload them, and then you're able to download uh, an RPC file that you could then just drag and drop into your CAD or BIM application, and then that asset would just render. The whole idea with the early RPCs was built on top of the 2D image, creating a 2D billboard and using that 2D image that your rendering engine would actually consume and render. When I came on board in 2018, I took that technology and started the RPC technology and started to move away from the 2D and really push hard into the 3D world with 3D meshes and materials. So RPC Creator has, it's been around. I knew we had to make an evolution of it, and I really had to understand what we were going to do, why we were going to do it, and who we were doing it for. So RPC Creator evolved into FOVEA, and why the name FOVEA? I'd like to tell this because we've had people say it's something weird to say, and why did you pick this? And so I chose this name for this product because by definition, the fovea is a small depression within your neurosensory retina area where your visual acuity is at its highest. Essentially, um, this is where any image that hits your brain is at its highest fidelity. And this seemed to resonate with the concept that we have of making sure that when you build a piece of content and you um, want to, if you would look forward to using that content forever for a long time, you want to build that piece of content in its richest and most defined format at its highest fidelity. And then wherever you're going to consume that piece of content, it can be altered and configured to be consumed for that application. So we built Fovea with that in mind, that any piece of content here should be a single source of truth. It should be as high fidelity as possible. And then you should have an awareness as to where you're going to use that content, where are you going to consume it. I'll touch on this a little bit later, but we also are paying attention to how do I find this content, right? So many of you probably come from firms that have Revit users, SketchUp users, Rhino users, maybe, and maybe rendering with Enscape and Twinmotion and a handful of other rendering engines. All these folks need content. They all need assets. They all need cars, people, trees, and furniture, and so on to populate their visualization or their visualization needs. Where do they go to get their content? Where do they find it? And so Fovea is really that next stepping point for people to latch onto and utilize to start building your library, your 3D asset library of the future. Okay, things that these assets will be able to be used again firm wide. The library is accessible to all your staff that you share the content with or the content channels with, and those assets can be consumed across multiple applications. So the RPC, as I said, is RPC technology is a backbone of Fovea. We make RPCs through the Fovea creation process, but we also support some native file formats that would be prepared for like V-Ray or Enscape, Twinmotion, and Lumion. Also, just so that folks can have, let's say, a digital twin of an RPC that they might want to use in another standalone application that may not support RPCs. This is just quick entry welcome page to Fovea. If I were to click on the create menu here, just to kind of start diving into the guts of Fovea, you have an option here to upload files, and you can upload RPC files even all the way to FBX, USDZ files, GLTF, so on. We take those files and upload those to our backend, and that begins the creation process. I'll show this in a second. We also have a canvas, a blank canvas, if you will, under the create menu, which is set for you to be able to consume GLTF and GLB files. You can drag and drop these files. You can get those files from virtually anywhere from 3D Warehouse to TurboSquid. A lot of folks are distributing GLB files. You can drag and drop those files onto this canvas, and that will begin your creation process. We also have plugins and exporters that we make for Fovea. 3 Studio Max, Blender, Revit are the 3 that are out in the world right now, production-wise. We're working on Rhino and SketchUp plugins as well. And this is just simple use cases for this, where firms might have 3 Studio Max models, model libraries that they might want to consider democratizing for the Revit users, for instance. Our 3 Studio Max plugin is a great use case for this, where really once you get that installed, you can load in your 3 Studio Max model, select it, and upload it directly to FOVEA, and we convert it into the RPCs and all the other file formats. Same with Blender. Blender artists now have a really quick way of democratizing their content for other users inside their firm in the Revit world. And then on the Revit side of the equation, we're tiptoeing into this a little bit. We have released in our latest version of the our Revit plugin, RPC Revit plugin, some tools to get content from Revit to FOVEA. There are tons of use cases for it. I won't get into the weeds on that, but I will say a simple use case is being able to take a Revit building and pass it off to a SketchUp. Someone who's using SketchUp and maybe doing the site plan inside of SketchUp, and they want to be able to get that building quickly into SketchUp. They could totally get that building exported by the Revit team out to them and import it in as an RPC into SketchUp and align it with their site plan and be able to just be firing off on all cylinders and be in sync with the Revit team on what that building design is. And that asset can be updated and then re-imported into SketchUp at basically any time. There's also one more way of getting content into FOVEA, and that is we have an iOS app. Just a couple screen grabs of the app. We support the both 2D and 3D model creation methods through the app. Photos, again, you could take a snapshot of a coworker or something like that, and it'll add it. You can add it, remove the background, and automatically, and we'll send it up to FOVEA, and you'll have an RPC or a billboard model of that asset ready for you within seconds. And then we also have the option of scanning. So we use the iOS API SDK to allow you to scan objects from the iPhone, and we can do that within the app, or you can also do that from some other apps, which I'll show you in just a second. So this is just a simple example. Actually, Sam worked on this a few months ago, just taking a snapshot, a scan of this little cup here, and uploading it into FOVEA, and then bringing it into Unreal Engine through our RPC plugin in Unreal, and then rendering that cup inside of Unreal Engine. All virtually drag and drop, point, click, and do your scan, and then submit that scan to FOVEA, and you get that model in your library virtually within a few clicks. We also support inside the app the ability to ingest, if you will, other scan data from other iOS apps like Polycam, Scaniverse, Metascan. These are all apps that folks use out there in the world, and some, these 5 different apps, or plenty more from where these came from, but these are the 5 that I use on a regular basis. They all have their own features and bells and whistles. I'm not going to get into the weeds on what those are, but they do go above and beyond in many cases our own scanner that we have built into our app. And I do recommend that once people start getting into more advanced stuff, if they want to do let's say smaller objects, or even bigger like rooms and things like that, that they might start using other apps, and we support those apps. So as soon as you have a model scanned in Polycam, you can literally just upload that file to FOVEA in one click and through the iOS app, and get that asset up in your FOVEA library. I do want to touch on this. Our sister company AVAIL, we're very tight with them, and we have plenty of integration points and partnership components to that relationship. We have worked really hard on an integration of FOVEA into AVAIL, and I'll demo this in a little bit. I just wanted to give a high-level overview of it at the moment. AVAIL has a concept of, if you all don't know, AVAIL has a concept of what's called marketplace, and our FOVEA integration comes in the form of a marketplace channel in AVAIL. And I'm just showing a quick screenshot of that channel open. On the left-hand side, you'll see what we call key cards, and you'll see a bunch of file types that are listed there. Um, and behind those key cards are individual assets, which again, I'll show in a bit. But on the right-hand side is actually our FOVEA canvas. Um, and so we have kind of integrated experience where we've got uh, content and content creation in the same window, and allowing our customers to both create content and manage the content at the same time. So um, with that, I'll jump into a little demo session here so y'all can see um, what it is that we have cooking in FOVEA.
Awesome. And as you are switching over to the demo, I'll just let everyone know that you probably see a poll up on your screen. So we have a few polls that will run throughout the digital event. This just helps us understand what content is really important to you so that as we put educational content out, we are catering it towards your needs. So with that, I will let the demo go back to Corey.
So FOVEA at its core, I said the part of this already, relies on RPC technology. The next level of technology that we have that's important is a big stack of web technologies. So what you're looking at here is a web browser, and you're looking at FOVEA inside of at the FOVEA app. Um, the place what we're looking at right now is the My Files area. So under Content, My Files would get you to access your library. Each one of these little elements here, all these images are pre-rendered and part of the publishing process. Um, the create menu is what I was showing in my slides earlier. This is where you would choose to be able to upload your FBX or OBJ files. And then this is a GLTF canvas that you can drag and drop onto your canvas. We do have, just for what it's worth, all of our documentation is built directly into the app. So the help menus here, and you can see I've got all the little icons, uh, sorry, all the references highlighting there. So you can find all the documentation directly inside the application. Um, when models get published, we add metadata to the published assets, and that metadata is critical for the lifespan of the data, the lifespan of the assets. Um, that data travels virtually everywhere that I'll say data can be supported. We try our best to get data into SketchUp and Rhino, for instance, but where Revit, for instance, handles data for objects and elements and things like that. Um, let's say the metadata layer that we have on top of our assets for categories is honored and supported inside of Revit, for instance. When an RPC is drag and dropped into Revit, we place that piece of content or that asset in the right category that it's supposed to be in. So furniture category, or planting, or people going under entourage, for instance. We that metadata is used to drive the best experience for you as possible. Tags on the left-hand column over here. All the tags you can put in during the publishing process, or you can actually even um, add tags to the content on the fly. So what I mean by that is I'm going to select this chair here, and I'll get into this uploading process in just a second. You'll see I select the chair, and I've got a preview of that chair here. I can spin it around. This chair was imported as an FBX file, obtained from TurboSquid, and it was uploaded as an OBJ file. Apologize for that. It was OBJ file. I chose OBJ today for this because, as you can see, there are no materials on this. It's just a gray file. Okay. OBJ file is probably the lowest level of fidelity, if you will, compared to like FBX, as an example, which might hold more material data inside of that file, and textures and so on and so forth inside of the FBX, or USD files do the same thing, GLBs also. So the OBJ might be shipped to you. You might download the OBJ, and have access to um, only the geometry. I'll show that in just a second. But this preview panel here, you can update your preview image in here, for instance, if you want to get a better screenshot of what the asset is. But there's some other information here. How many materials are on this asset, for instance? So I can get a view of 7 materials are on this model as it's been imported in. There are no textures, 67 meshes altogether, and you can see the number of vertices and triangles there as well. The metadata, the name of it, the category, um, all that stuff at this point is actually editable. So I can actually add more metadata on here and save the metadata and update that without actually going into the model and making any changes to it in there and republishing. So the preview over here of this is a pretty nice thing to have inside the web app. I will now transition into opening up this file. So I chose the create from file method, uploaded the OBJ. That OBJ was consumed by our backend and services, and this is the file that results inside of FOVEA. So you're looking at a 3D canvas. We don't have, we're not 3 Studio Max. We're not making 3 Studio Max or Blender. This canvas is really here for you to visualize the model and for you to have the ability to manipulate and add materials and add and change materials on the fly. We can't add geometry. We can remove geometry. You can do some optimization in here. If I wanted to remove some nuts and bolts and things like that from a highly detailed model, I could actually select those assets, those parts of the mesh, and delete those out, and work on some pre-optimization of the data sets, which is always good to do if you're trying to get highly detailed models into Enscape and you know that you're going into Enscape. You might want to do some of that pre-optimization early on. Okay. This Once this file is imported in, one of the very first things that we teach people to do, or we kind of inform people about, is the grid on the bottom here underneath the model. You can see there's pretty dense. I'll say this. It's a dense grid there. That grid is representative of about it's a meter, square meter, basically, each square in the grid. And so that chair, as you can tell right off the bat, is a massive chair. It's a massive in size. That's not a surprise to me, working with an OBJ, because OBJ doesn't necessarily carry units in with it, like some other file formats do. Okay. What I can do, though, is one of the first things I would want to do is correct the scale in there. So what I could do is go to the model properties option over here, and you can see this model comes in up top here in the checklist. It says unitless. If I click on, I'm going to take a rough guess on this. This OBJ probably has come in as inches, but I can look at millimeters, for instance, and see that that chair, for instance, now on top of the grid is way too small. It's a fraction of a meter in size. And if I went up to meters, you can see that's probably lining up with what's come in from that OBJ. So that OBJ is probably um, uh, written in an application that was originally had a unit set as meters. But we want to do a conversion of this so that we get the right scale of this. The right scale is probably inches. I can pretty well check to see that looks about right visually, fitting within 1 meter square. If I want to have a better visual of that and to understand what the units might possibly be, I can run down to, or scroll down to, this bounding box area here. And I have a bounding box representation, and you can see the size is written out here in millimeters. I can change that to feet and inches, and you'll see this is giving me, about 3 feet in height and about 3 feet in length. It's probably probably, I'm just going to say it's accurate. I'd have to do a quick measurement on a wheelchair to see, but it's pretty close, probably. But you have the power here to adjust the scale ultimately. If that's not right, you can mess around with the scale settings here. All these the scale factor on this is 0.254 to get that conversion from meters to inches. And but you can scale that, use that scale factor there. We also have a gizmo that you could use to manually scale this. I don't recommend using it on a regular basis, but if it's something that you just want to eyeball, you can use that gizmo. So once you have that uh, scale factor all put into place and you're happy with that, you can hop over to the let me just turn off that bounding box. You can hop over to the materials tab, and this is where you're going to start doing work on setting up materials and applying materials to your model. When this model came in, it said there were 7 materials on here. If I look at the material list, I can see some funky names in here. This is derived from whatever the exporting application was. I can see it says wire, so I'm going to guess it's probably like SolidWorks or something like that. Probably it could be. Doesn't really matter where it came from, but I can use this combo box up here to start selecting on which materials I want to start editing and manipulating. But I can also select them in my scene. So I can select the back part of this chair, for instance, and automatically in a materials list that selects this material here, 135, blah blah blah. What's one of the first things that I want to do now is actually rename that. So let's just do a quick check. I'm going to grab another piece of geometry here and make sure it's highlighted and look at the material that's listed and it says it's a different number. So I'll select the back of the chair again and I'll click on rename, and I can rename this to something like leather as an example, rename that. And now in that list, it's differentiated out. And I would start that process of renaming those materials and start to give a little more redefinition to what's been imported into FOVEA. So if I select that leather material, down here in the material properties, you can see we can set base different properties for that material. Material attributes, base color, metalness, roughness, all full PBR stack here, including transparency and clear coat options. If I just go ahead and say, well, let's make this a black material, and maybe it's a little bit shiny. I can change the roughness on this. As an example, if there's a bump mat on here, you'd be able to see that a little bit better, but I can manipulate the materials here. So I won't manipulate every single material. I just want to give you all an overview of what you can do with this process. But I will grab, let's say, one more material here and look at it. It's name. We'll rename this to Chrome as an example. And I can go down to the chrome material and make my metalness and bring down my roughness as an example. And boom, I've got a pretty decent chrome material already ready to go. We are working on material library for you guys so that you can essentially just grab the material and grab the material and assign a material to it, or drag and drop it from the material library onto the canvas. That's coming probably early next year. All right. But we support texture maps, so you can add texture maps on here for all these assets. And we can support the highest resolution texture map that you want to throw at it from the very get-go. So back to the concept of FOVEA, if you have 8K texture maps, use the 8K texture maps at this level. By all means, put them in your original data source, because you'll never know when you want to use those high fidelity assets down the road. Okay. So just in next step in this process, after I got the materials all prepared, really all you're ready to do is publish after that. I want to get this chair into Revit, and all I need to do now is publish. So I can go to the publish option down here. I can change this to whatever I want as a title, change the category. I'll keep it as other in this case. I can keep my tags the way they are and add new ones. Um, the uh, proxy option here is something that might relates more to the RPC asset than it does anything else at this point in time. But it's something you do want to pay attention to if you're using the RPC file in your CAD applications. The options that we have are billboard, simplified mesh, bounding box, and custom mesh. Again, I've mentioned these in other webinars. I won't get into the weeds on these, but you have different use cases for each one of these proxy mesh types. In this particular case, I'll just choose billboard. You do have options here to optimize. So if I do want to publish this asset out with a lower uh, resolution texture map, or lower resolution texture maps, I can actually use a texture downscaling option here. You'll see there's a note in here that says this overrides local material optimizations. I'll step back over into the materials in my next model just to show you this part. But just note that this is this is at a global level. So I'm affecting every single texture map across my entire asset in all my materials. And then the other global optimization that we have is for mesh simplification. So originally, when I showed the preview of this, you saw there was estimated triangles in there of I think it was 200,000 and change. That list is down here. If I know I'm going to bring this into Enscape, for instance, I can set that. I can try to get a target triangle count of like 52,000 in this case. This is automated and automatic calculations and optimizations behind the scenes on our end. Or I could try to do a custom. I could do a custom optimization to try to get this down to like let's say maybe 20,000 or 30,000 faces or something like that. I could input in my own percentage of decimation in this particular case. And so now I can hit publish new. This packages up everything, takes all the metadata and everything that we just assigned to this particular publish, and it's running up into our services right now, and it'll be processed in our cloud. It'll be ready for download in a matter of minutes. Okay, so that RPC has been published, and if I run back to my models, my files area, you'll see that I have one model that will be shown as processing here. It's sitting there in the processing state. And then here's a file that I finished a little bit earlier today, just to be able to open this up and show you guys this. Before I open this up, post process, after it's processed, you have the option here to edit the file. You can have the option to download the file, and if you so wish, you can delete the file. Under the download options, I want to point this out before I jump into AVAIL here in a minute. If you were just using the web version, or if you're using the iOS version, iOS FOVEA app, you can actually download files from the iOS app as well, if you wanted to share those with somebody else. But the different file types that are getting processed of that wheelchair that's processing right now span from RPCs to GLTF to Epic Games Datasmith file format, to Enscape's asset custom asset in a static form to Enscape asset package, as well as USD to all the way down to a pure Blender file. So that chair that I just made can be brought into and consumed directly inside of Blender through our Blender plugin. So let's take a look at this file after I have completed all my material changes and so on and so forth. Open this file back up, and so I just added, the nuts and bolts, materials, and tires and all that good stuff. If I go to the materials menu, you'll see I've renamed everything, so everything's all clean and organized and ready to go. The thing that I wanted to show with this after publishing is in the material. So let's just go to the leather material as an example. If I click on mesh simplification here, I can get a sense as to how many triangles are in that particular are related to the mesh that that material is on. So I can look under this optimization option under the material, directly under the material. So looking at optimizing a mesh at a material level, right? So in this case, I grab that material, I'm looking at it, and I can see that um, roughly speaking, there's about 8,000 faces in that particular mesh. Um, Depending on how granular you want to be with your optimizations, I could just optimize that particular mesh or meshes. All right. Um, this is probably not the best use case since it's not a super high fidelity mesh of that particular piece of geometry. But if you were bringing in automobiles and, you know, really high detailed, let's say kitchen appliances and things like that that you wanted in your project, you're going to want to pay attention to what the density of the meshes is, and you can do that on the material level. It's a pretty big benefit that's provided by the FOVEA app to be able to do this. You get that granular control of being able to optimize your models at that level, at the material level. All right, so that's a pretty good overview of FOVEA and its with that particular file. What I want to do now is kind of circle back over to AVAIL for just a second and just kind of hit on um, you know, really what is the idea of the core behind FOVEA and which is ease of use and just getting this content democratized and deliverable to your entire firm. Um, the file that I just created is probably sitting here under the RPC folder. So I'm diving into that underneath that RPC card that I just showed you. And if I look under the section down here, all the metadata that I put on my RPCs is sitting here and living and breathing already inside of AVAIL, so I can sort through my content here. If I click on other, I'm not seeing this. Actually, hold on. I know why. I'm logged into the wrong account here. I apologize. Any case, make do with this. Those chairs would be coming in here if I was into the and logged into the right account. But the chair has the metadata on it. It has a preview of it here inside of the AVAIL application, so I can just double check that this might or might not be the chair that I wanted to bring in to my project. And okay, that looks like it's good. I could even do some post-production kind of efforts here. If somebody wanted to take a quick PNG of this and bring this into Photoshop, they can actually do a quick screen grab of this model right here and bring that that image into Photoshop and add it to their image. So the RPC in this case becomes even more further democratized in this preview panel, where you can use that use data or information from that RPC from here into other even processes like Photoshop. So what's super powerful about the FOVEA part of this is, again, I'm going to hide the key cards. If I want to look at that chair again, I'll just do a quick search up top here and search for chair. You're looking at a 17 or so or different iterations or twins, if you will, of the original RPC data set. All of those files are produced by FOVEA, and that data then gets pushed into AVAIL. And you can see at this level down here under application, we know on your behalf what the best file format is for you to consume that asset in for which application you want to consume it in. So In this case, let's just say my target application was Blender. And I want to say I'm going into Blender. I can select Blender here, and you can see here the choices kind of slimmed down, and the file types that are displayed down here also trimmed down a little bit. But I have different file types that are sitting here, again, all produced by FOVEA. That's part of the process. I've got my Blender file, DAE file, FBX file, and so on and so forth. If I um, wanted to just use a pure Blender file, it's there. All those files. There looks like there's two different publishes, but those are the Blender versions of all those files. Actually, there's the chair. Actually, I guess I'm in the right account. They're just still coming in. In any case, there's a Blender version of those wheelchairs that I published earlier. Okay, so if I wanted to bring those files into um, let's say Chaos Vantage as an example, uh, what file types can I use to bring into Vantage? Well, Vantage will accept the DAE, FBX, GLTF, OBJ, and VRScene files. So I can bring in any of those assets if I want to choose VRScene, which is the most native. Here are the VRScene files of those assets, and I can literally download, drag and drop, and place those assets into Chaos Vantage. If I have a look at Revit, for instance, with Revit, the file types kind of zoomed out, kind of narrow down a little bit, quite a bit more to OBJ, RPC, and VRScene. If you have the RPC plugin, you're probably more likely going to use the RPC. But if somebody wants to even import in an OBJ file for one reason or another, they can grab an OBJ file from these assets and bring it into Revit. Revit will import in an OBJ. All right. If you're a pure hardcore V-Ray user, and you only want to use V-Ray and you don't want to use RPCs, you could totally use our VRScene files to put them into your Revit project and use those assets directly inside of Revit as VRScenes. Okay. So all that content, all in that one publish, the metadata, the different file formats that we're creating, all that stuff is now well and readily organized for you right here inside of AVAIL. And you can literally download and drag and drop these assets from AVAIL basically into any application, including Revit and Rhino and SketchUp. I will do one more little show and tell here before I stop. I'll slide the AVAIL off over to the other space. I have Blender pulled up here. And for those of you who are out there looking for assets and so on and so forth, you probably have seen Blender models out there. You know, Blender's free. This asset collection right here is from Evermotion. It was a free asset that I grabbed from them. This file, I'm not going to get into the weeds on the materialities and all that other stuff. I'm just going to show you simply how I literally open this up in Blender. I've done nothing with this. All right, zero. I can select this chair in Blender, and I can go to our ArchVision plugin menu here. I'm logged in. I can add a name to this chair, webinar, chair, furniture. I can select my metadata, add chair on this. I can put tags on here. And I can say school, for instance. And then I can choose my mesh type here, which proxy mesh I want to have for my asset. In this case, I'll choose simplified mesh. And the level of decimation is set. I'll use a default there. I can click on down here. I can click on generate preview. We'll take that file and we'll literally align it to a scene that we've created behind the scenes, and allow you to capture that preview of that model. And then I can use current preview for that model. And then I can quite literally just click on publish to FOVEA. That model's now getting uh, packaged up and sent to FOVEA behind the scenes. I've done nothing with material manipulation. I've done nothing with um, uh, the decimation of the mesh inside a blender or anything like that. I'm just grabbing it and going. Um, Once we get this file inside of FOVEA, or once you get those files inside of FOVEA, that's where you could do your material manipulation and change colors of textures and things like that on the fabric, and do your decimation and so on and so forth, and publish that file and have it ready for you to consume and use. Again, whether you do that by downloading it from our web app or whether you do that from the Avail application, that asset is literally ready for you to just drag and drop and go. All right. I'm okay to open up to questions. We got a little bit of time here to have a little chat if we want.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. So yeah, for any of our viewers, feel free to add any questions to the Q&A. And great, I guess I have a question for you. I know earlier in the presentation, you talked a little bit about whether someone working in Revit wanted to send something to SketchUp or, vice versa. So for now, you've been showing smaller objects. Can people do, a larger scene, maybe a room or maybe a couple of assets like a table setting? Is there kind of any, I guess, limitations there or any workflows that you've seen work successfully?
I'll say simple answer is there are no limitations other than what's kind of, you know, what the limits of your CAD package are for the most part. We can build RPCs of virtually any size and configuration. So yes, you could do table settings, a whole, table, napkins and chairs, all that in one, and bundle that into one RPC as an example. Um, but again, depending on what your end application is and what your renderer is, you just want to be cognizant of what the size is of the assets that you're bringing into the application. We've done some projects with customers where they've built site models and you know uh, existing context buildings inside of 3 Studio Max, for example, and all of those assets that they made uh, in this one case I'm referring to, they're all pretty low poly meshes. They weren't high poly, let's say full Revit models for every building in the project. But we were able to pretty easily get that entire site, a few square blocks of a city into Revit as a RPC, and then very easily consumable by Enscape in this case, and even easily consumable by Revit's own renderer. So it takes a little bit of forethought in what you want to do to where you're going with this stuff and what you're going to want to consider as far as optimizations go before you get there. But FOVEA gives you the luxury of being able to do those optimizations directly inside the app.
Yeah, I think that's extremely valuable. I know that I've worked on projects where we might have a model inside of 3ds Max and want to bring that into Unity or Unreal and want to have it low poly, but still be able to pass it off to another person who may want to render it in V-Ray or in a different renderer. And so this is just such a powerful tool in allowing that additional level of collaboration. And even the small, thoughtful saving a PNG of the thumbnail at different kind of perspectives of the object is also something that's really simple, but actually can be very useful, not only for any, designers working in 3D, but also if they're, I've had situations where a graphic designer needs a PNG of a certain asset or a detail or something. And so being able to get that is awesome that they're able to do it with this one tool. So it looks like we do have a question. The question is, how do I get the Revit plugin?
So Revit plugins available from the download section of our website. If you uh, want the full experience for using, let's say, RPC assets inside of Revit, you'll want to also download AVAIL and the AVAIL plugin for Revit. There are a few parts and pieces there to get fully up and running, but I can promise you it's well worth the effort of getting everything installed and up and running because of just generally speaking the efficiencies that you'll gain once everything's installed and you're up and running.
Yeah, and I just sent the link inside of the webinar chat for anyone who wants to visit that. Now we have another question. Can you adjust a model's material inside the loaded program as an instance parameter, type parameter, or do you need to keep creating individual uploads?
It's a very, very good question. Um, the short answer is most people are building individual assets for those changes. However, uh, we do generally speaking, the RPC does support variants. Um, Revit's not the best example for us to pull from at the moment because Revit doesn't read in those variants. We are looking at ways to be able to handle that. Um, but right now, Revit won't handle those variants. It will handle it for some objects, like we were able to get car paint for cars supported in Revit. So it's that variant material option is exposed inside of Revit, and you can change the material, the car paint material color inside of Revit. Um, Inside of 3 Studio Max or inside of SketchUp or Rhino, you'll be able to actually access the variants a little bit more fluidly, and you can change those parameters of the assets on the fly. Um, we'll see what we can get done in Revit here sooner rather than later.
Awesome. So, what if someone from the crowd here wants to learn more information or share this information with others? Should they get in touch with you, Corey, or Kelsey, or anywhere? What's the best way to kind of learn more information?
Yeah, it's best to reach out to me directly at this point. There are so many different use cases. Using FOVEA with Revit is one thing, using FOVEA with Revit and Twinmotion as an example. And if that's your pipeline and that's your workflow, it's good for us to know what that is so that we can help you best navigate through the user experience and the workflow setup for your particular use case. Um, and then that's just a single application point of view, right? If your project teams are working across multiple applications and you want to use these assets across those applications, it's really good to know what your stack of technology is and what those applications are, so we can help you understand how to use these assets across all the applications. But generally speaking, if you have the RPC plugin for the application that you're looking to have in your workflow, let's say SketchUp plus Revit or Rhino plus Revit as an example, you have our RPC plugins. This content is consumable in each one of those in those applications through our plugin.
Nice. And if you want to know any additional information about some of the last digital events we put on, I know I shared in the chat one of the previous digital events. This event is also being recorded and will be posted on YouTube as well. So you could share there or refer back to it if you want to see some of the demo once again. I do want to share one more resource here in the chat. This is going to be a place for the documentation of FOVEA, so you can learn a little bit more in depth of some of the stuff that Corey covered today. But we are coming, close to the hour, so I just want to ask once more if there's any questions. Now is your time to pick Corey's brain, and I guess Corey, if there any kind of final thoughts that you want to wrap up with here.
Um, I'll just say, if you all are at all interested in a global 3D asset library that you can use firm wide, that you can use with any renderer, virtually any renderer, I'll say, um, please reach out and let's have a chat so we can show you um, really the power of all this put together in the context of your own environment.
Awesome. Well, that's a great closing sentence there. We will end this a few minutes early as we don't have any questions. But yeah, once again, feel free to reach out to Corey if anything does pop up. We want to thank all of you for taking your time out of your day to join us. We hope it was very helpful, that you were able to learn something new and really imagine how this could help some of your workflows. So with that, we will say farewell and hope to hear from you soon.